It's TEDA time.
Living in Terrebonne, living in Terrebonne. You sure won't want to miss it, and I'll bet that you'll revisit living in Terrebonne.
Local Terrebonne Parish economic news.
Hello and welcome to this edition of TEDA Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very, very much. We're always glad to welcome in Cohen B. Guidry. Cohen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me back, Keith.
All right. Also joining us, the man known only as Pulaski.
Thank you.
Chris Pulaski, thanks for being here, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so very often, you know you've arrived when your last name just says it all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
it's one name thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're very glad, of course, CEO of TEDA with Cohen and Executive Director of Planning and Zoning for Terrebonne Parish, Chris Pulaski. And so it's one of those things where we talk often about the P word, right? Partnerships. But I got to tell you, really evaluating about the value of partnerships, the one with the parish is probably one of the most important.
It is.
For TEDA.
It is. We work closely together. I mean, they fund our budget and, keep us going and allow us to do a lot of the great things that we can accomplish in the parish. And we work so closely. Pulaski and I work on a lot of different programs together and projects and some things that are just out of our realm. It's not necessarily business development. It's not necessarily planning and zoning, but it's quality of life stuff that's very important to he and I both personally. And that kind of brought us together. And I think we work really well together and we feed off of one another.
Well, when you have two people that are passionate about our community, and you and Chris are certainly those two things, very passionate about our community and the value and quality of life, it really makes a difference. And so, Chris, you're one of those people that you're the go-to person, quite frankly, when it comes to thinking outside the box a little bit about what we do and how we do it. I mean, I go back to this all the time, just looking at our situation with housing after the storm, you were the champion saying, you know what, there's got to be a faster and better way. And y'all thought outside the box to do that. I love the idea that we can do that with some of the challenges in our area.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good evolution to have TEDA and the parish together, because when you think about, say, businesses coming into the area or people looking at Terrebonne to invest in Terrebonne Parish, I mean, that's what TEDA is doing. They're going out, they're doing business development, they're working with those folks, providing them information. But eventually that conversation is going to get down to questions about things like infrastructure or available properties and sites, what building permits look like, what's that whole process about. So having, especially the parish, but even more so the planning and zoning department of the parish working closely with TEDA. I mean, that you see that partnership in a lot of different communities. In a lot of places, planning and zoning and economic development are one and the same.
Right. And so it's really interesting how those two fit together so very nicely, because quite frankly, the only way that we can do some of these projects is if there's some available place,
right.
Or if there's some available options for what we can do. And quite frankly, sometimes we just don't have space, or we need to really think outside the box about where we can do that, or outside the office, if you will, about where and how we do that. My dad and I had that conversation, interestingly enough, about some of the changes over on the east side about when we can, maybe have some opportunity for having a community center again, where people can go to. The middle of town's got it, west side's got it, and a lot of other areas have it, but east side's kind of lost that for our seniors. And so it's just one of those things. And so that's an idea that I'll float by you guys at some point, and we'll talk about that with regards to how we develop those things with all of the people that do that, right? And so that's one of those ways that I think we try to find an avenue, but that's where partnerships really matter.
Yep.
And so let's talk a little bit about this grant award, this EDA grant award. I kind of want to start talking about that. We may not be able to finish in this segment, but tell us a little bit about that grant award and what it's about, Chris.
So the EDA is the Economic Development Administration. So they have an annual grant, national, very competitive. But in 2023, they announced that they had a supplement. So they had money left over. So they created a separate grant program just for communities that had natural disasters in 2021 or 2022. So our competition really got smaller.
Sure.
And there was one of the grant administrators for EDA had tracked down one of our consultants with CSRS who was attending a conference and brought this grant to their attention. Now, when that happens, you respond.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right? That's a big sign
Yeah,
right
somebody
there.
taps you on the shoulder and goes, hey, you
Right.
want to look at this? You really want to look at that.
So when we got to talking about where this grant, which is basically, it's for infrastructure to make or help get a parcel or a tract of land that wasn't developable because of lack of infrastructure,
Okay.
get that infrastructure brought to it so it makes it more attractive to the investors. Now, they're not just, that wouldn't count for something like retail or restaurants. Although that's important and does have jobs, what EDA is really looking for is something that has high paying jobs. And when we put all of those factors together, that's when we decided, well, look, I mean, the property that Terrebonne General Health System acquired over there by the roundabout on West Side Boulevard seems like a good place to start because we knew that there was a lack of water from that in that region, and with the types of high-paying jobs that development is sure to have, that seemed like a good fit. So that's when we started working with TEDA and all the other partners, and I guess we'll talk about that later on. But
Nice segue.
There you go.
Pulaski. I appreciate that. So we're going to come right back with Cohen and with Chris Pulaski as we talk a whole lot more about economic development in our area. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
It's TEDA time.
Tune in to HTV10 for some TEDA time. On this show, you will learn what's going on in Terrebonne Parish with Cohen B. Guidry and all of his special guests that he brings along.
Local Terrebonne Parish economic news.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of TEDA Time. Again, your host, Keith Weissach. Thanks so much for joining us. Joined again by Cohen and Chris. You know, it's interesting, Chris, you were kind of talking about this EDA grant award. This thing really kind of just gets to grow together with all of the different components. I love, as we talked about the partnerships, this is one that's got so many different pieces to it. So this grant, and we qualified for this grant because of a natural disaster. And then we got this grant, and you guys have come up with some really creative ways to really enhance what we have as an opportunity right there near Peppers in between Peppers and the roundabout, if you will, off of Enterprise. Let's talk a little bit more about the value that's going to bring to our area and the partnership that TEDA has with it.
So from an economic development standpoint, I mean, that region, the whole MLK corridor, I mean, everyone is aware of the development that's gone on in that area. That's one of our major regional draws for our economy. I mean, I'm sure the majority of our sales tax is coming out of that corridor.
Right. And probably that 1 mile or so
Exactly.
in that area.
So we have all that area along Enterprise Drive and West Side Boulevard from the roundabout to MLK that has yet to be developed. I mean, there's that residential area on the other side.
Right.
But the area around the 40-plus acre tract that the hospital has for their wellness center, that's what we focused on with this grant application. So what it is, and this is the announcement, basically.
Yeah, which is really big news.
Yeah.
If people are listening at all, pay attention to this.
So this is where we're first announcing it locally. Parish President Bergeron is having a series of town hall meetings beginning tonight, and it's part of that presentation too.
Okay.
But the grant is a total, the project total is $3.2 million. So the grant that we were awarded was 2.6. It's an 80-20 grant. Most grants have some local
Matching
cost share.
funds, right.
So it's 80-20. So it was 2.6 from the grant and 600,000 is the local match. So the partners in the application The parish made the application, and then we have our co-partners or co-sponsors in it, which is Terrebonne General Health Systems and Waterworks.
Okay,
Right?
right.
But because of the nature of the grant, it's an EDA, Economic Development Administration. TEDA was instrumental in getting the information to put into that grant application, because what are the impacts?
Right.
What are we going to get for our $2.6 million for your $3.2 million project? So the project is a 16-inch water line that would basically run from Enterprise and Corporate in front of Peppers along Enterprise Drive, takes a right turn at the roundabout, and then goes up to MLK, and then it'll go right and left and tie into the water line at around Zen, and then the water line that ends around Walk-On. So we're closing that loop.
Right.
It also has built into the grant a widening of Enterprise Drive, so it'll be 4-laned with a little boulevard.
Right.
And that's why the West Side Boulevard roundabout's a bit wonky, is because it was designed to accommodate that future widening. So this project is going to not only open up that corridor for development, but of course, it's just a major starting point or head start for the hospital, for Terrebonne General Health System, to have that wellness center there, which, you know, is going to be a great thing
It's
for our
very
community.
remarkable. Absolutely. And so, again, we talk about, initially, I think we talk about how you get together, you come to the table, and you see a partnership. But Cohen, you've been actively searching for opportunities for grant money. It's just one of the things that TEDA is outstanding at, and even asking, hey, can we get this? Oh, no, that you can't have it.
Right. And with the LA Competes grant,
Right.
it's been out for 2 years.
Okay. And y'all are aware.
We've thrown several projects out of our infrastructure and to be told no. So this one, you know, the importance of good communication, partnerships, Chris and I working closely together, is we know what might fit where. And when the announcement came out about this one, said, let's pull this one out, dust it off, and throw it at them. Talked to LED, and they said, can't be state matched funds. Nope, it's not that. It's federal. It's parish only, and then all those pieces, it
Checked
matches
out
up.
all the boxes.
Checked all the boxes, and then so we submitted the pre-application for it. We've got to have some sponsorship from a regional EDO, which would be SLEC.
Okay.
And then so all those pieces are falling into place to help with the match that the community needs for that money.
And so, again, it's remarkable to me. And again, I'm one of those people that you give me this cement, and I really kind of feel, or you give me this building, I really feel like I can go in and make a difference. But you guys know how and where to find the money to lay the cement, to find a way to get the building, and well, to find the land first and foremost. I love that idea that we can come together and look and see how this fits together, and finding ways to pay for it that is grant money, right?
Right.
That's out there to say, we need to be able to help you recover from your difficult situation. How are you going to use it? And y'all have been able to marry these two grants to be able to do that and rely on each other's expertise, right?
Right. I mean, we had an 80-20 grant to start with, and then Cohen sniffed out this other grant, which is a 90-10. So if that grant pays, okay, we had the 20% local match from the first grant. So now we're going to have a 90-10 grant to pay for that. So now instead of paying 20% of 2.6 million, we're paying 10% of 600,000.
Or
You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. And drop the mic, right? I mean, or better yet, to be able to have that process, our hospital, our public-owned hospital by our particular area through our parish, right? Parish-owned hospital, now doesn't have to pay the $3.2 million to be able to do that. So
More money going into their project.
yes, exactly. And so there's so much more to talk about. And so thank you guys for being here. Thank you for joining us as well. We appreciate it. We'll be right back right here on this version of TEDA Time.
It's TEDA time.
Tune in to HTV10 for some TEDA Time. On this show, you will learn what's going on in Terrebonne Parish with Cohen B. Guidry and all of his special guests that he brings along.
Local Terrebonne Parish economic news.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of TEDA Time. We've got Cohen and Chris here talking about taking advantage of these grants and these applications. And something we want to clarify, we have the EDA grant. It's been awarded.
Correct.
But this LED LA grant, we are still competing for, but we've checked off all the boxes.
We're not competing. We know that we've submitted our application.
Right.
And state and regional just have to get all their agreements in place and get everything. They haven't said you're awarded, you get, X amount of dollars, but
Right.
it's looking very favorable. And it looks very promising. They hadn't told us no.
Right. Well, which in the past, they've said no very
right off the bat.
quickly,
Right.
because we've not been able to check off all the boxes. And this program, through very valuable partnerships and looking at the big picture of all of our development in our area, all of our economic development as it relates to our community, is just really, really cool. And so let's talk about this 100-year grant competition for GNOF.
So when we go back and talk about partnerships, this falls in it. And from Chris's and my standpoint, what we did was, I guess it was more personal than anything, is for a quality of life aspect of it. And I had seen some illustrations that Chris had shared with me when I first came here about what everybody knows is the old Shell property that was donated behind Rouse's, off of Savannah 311 and Bayou Keene and Highway 90, our borders. And Greater New Orleans Foundation had a 100-year competition. They just made their 100th-year birthday. They had $1 million to spend. So they said, we're going to put 10 $100,000 grants out there, and you come to us with your best sales pitch as what you think would help us prevent flooding and loss of homes and all these things. And it's in the entire southern region. Mm-hmm. So Chris, I went to a news conference, and Chris had told me about this, and I really didn't have a clue on what we were going to be talking about.
Right.
So the other parishes get up and start talking about, well, we've got in the lower Ninth Ward, we've got this. And Chris's voice popped in my head. You know, get voices.
Yeah.
And,
if you're going to get a voice in your head, do Pulaski's, right?
Yeah. But it reminded me of what we have and what we had talked about for opportunities. So we just started talking about it. And the staff at Greater New Orleans Foundation, they got really excited. And I was like, we might be onto something. Yeah. So I'm driving back and I'm calling Pulaski and I'm like, man, we might have something here.
Wow.
And I had never really worked on a grant before.
Okay.
Up until that time. So he got involved and really gave me some good guidance, some help, and taught me a lot about it. But we both sit back and say, man, that's a lot of work for $100,000, but it puts into something. And Chris, I don't want to steal all his thunder on it, but there's that Shell property is ginormous because it hits so many different facets, more than just quality of life.
Well, what we were talking about when we were talking about the EDA grant
Right.
and the Terrebonne General Wellness Center's property, this is kind of similar because it's all about knowing, like, looking at long range planning. So
Right.
this program, the GNOF, the Greater New Orleans Foundation, their 100,000. It was intended for these applicants to use that money towards getting funded for larger pots of federal money, let's say.
Okay. It's like a stepping stone.
Correct. So it could be used for whatever you needed it to be, whether it was just a local match or something more. Terrebonne Parish was fortunate in that we were the only parish to get 2 awards. So Terrebonne Parish and TEDFO had put in our application for the old Shell property project. But United Houma Nation also put in, and they were awarded, and they parlayed that into a $56 million NOAA grant that they just announced 2 weeks ago, right? The parish, we're using that money to put towards, we have a hazard mitigation grant program funding through Hurricane Ida recovery dollars, and we have the community development block grant disaster recovery from Hurricane Ida. Together, that's $6 million from HMGP and $9 million from the DR money, the CDBG DR money. So, that 100,000, we're now working, using that money. We have a Dana Brown Associates, landscape architects, GIS engineering. They're working on a plan, schematic plans for the containment berm and all the infrastructure, water control structures, but we're also building into that the recreational components to it. multi-use trail, kayak launches, nature trails, all that good stuff. But that's what that 100,000 is going towards, because we need that information to give to the HMGP and to the CDBG-DR folks to review.
Yeah.
So
And
it's great timing.
Right, go ahead.
And real quick, a plug we want to give to them. If you guys are interested, the public's interested to see more about this program, they will be at Hero Fest with a full tent set up and display and getting public opinion and things like that. So I think it'd be a good opportunity. If you're at this festival, stop in and check it out.
Yeah. And, we talked about the value of checking the boxes when it comes to getting grants and grant applications. The value of what this property donated by
Right.
Shell, so very kind of them to donate that. And then all of the options that we get for this $100,000 of this money from GNOF, and now that's turning into all of this other monies. It checks all the boxes for improving our options here to prevent storms, right? To preventing problems, being able to handle fires and those kinds of issues,
Yeah.
right? Like we've seen, and the value of all of the community efforts and recreation that it's going to bring. Great stuff. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith.
And that'll do it for this edition of TEDA, but don't go anywhere. A whole lot more right here on HTV.